The metal chair made a soft scraping sound as Commander Zexthul shifted his weight. His 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a nervous habit that all Veltar shared when facing something they could not understand. Across the small table sat Daniel Carter, a human who looked nothing like the terrifying monster Zexthul had expected. Carter wore a simple blue uniform with no fancy decorations or symbols of rank. His brown hair was neat but not perfect. His hands rested calmly on the table between them. Lieutenant Maria Santos stood near the wall, her recording device capturing every word and gesture. She had been chosen for this meeting because she spoke 17 alien languages and could read the tiny movements that showed when aliens were lying. Right now she could see that Zexthul was afraid, but he was not lying. The room itself was nothing special. White walls, bright lights, and air that smelled like the cleaning chemicals used on all military ships. The only sound was the soft hum of the air recycling system. No one had expected this moment to come. 3 years ago, humans were barely worth noticing. Now they were here, in charge of everything, asking questions that would decide the fate of entire civilizations. Zexthul's translator device hung around his neck like a silver necklace. It flickered with blue light every time he spoke, turning his words into human language. Sometimes it made small clicking sounds when it could not find the right words. Some human ideas simply did not exist in other languages. Daniel Carter leaned forward slightly. His voice was calm and patient. "Commander, we need to understand what happened. Your people started this conflict. Now you want peace. Help us understand why." The alien commander's breathing changed. Each breath made a soft whistling sound through the small holes in his neck. 3 years ago, your people were nothing to us. You were new to space travel. Your ships were slow and clumsy. Your weapons were simple. We thought you were just another young species that would learn to follow the rules like all the others. Carter nodded but said nothing. He had learned that silence often got better answers than questions. "The Galactic Council has rules," Zexthul continued. "When a new species joins us, they follow the established order. They trade where they are told to trade. They settle where they are allowed to settle. They respect the boundaries that have kept peace for 1,000 years. This is how civilized beings behave." Maria Santos watched the alien's eyes. All 4 of them were focused on Carter now. Fear was still there, but something else too. Respect, maybe. Or confusion. "Your people seemed to understand this at first," Zexthul said. "Your diplomats were polite. They signed the trade agreements. They accepted the territorial restrictions. We thought everything would be normal." The alien paused and touched his translator device. It made a few soft beeps as it adjusted itself. But then something changed. Or maybe we just started paying attention. Your people were different. They asked questions that made no sense. They wanted to know why certain areas of space were forbidden. They asked about the history of conflicts we had forgotten centuries ago. They seemed curious about things that did not concern them. Carter finally spoke. "Curiosity is normal for humans?" "Yes," Zexthul said, and his voice carried a tone that the translator could not quite capture. "We learned this. But your curiosity was not like other species. When the Kethmari want to know something, they ask their elders. When the Zorthak seek knowledge, they consult their databases. When humans become curious, they go and look for themselves." The room fell quiet again. Maria adjusted her position against the wall, making sure her recording device had a clear view of both speakers. "The first signs came from your merchant ships," Zexthul continued. "They were supposed to follow established trade routes, safe routes that had been used for generations. But your captains kept finding new paths. Shorter routes, faster routes through areas that other species considered too dangerous or too difficult." The alien's hands moved as he spoke, gesturing in ways that seemed almost human. "At first we thought this was just inexperience. New species often make mistakes. They learn to be more careful after they lose a few ships. But your people never lost ships. They found ways through asteroid fields that our computer said were impossible to navigate. They discovered shortcuts through areas of space that our best pilots avoided." Carter remained silent, but Maria could see the smallest hint of a smile at the corner of his mouth. "Then came the colonies," Zexthul said. "Every species is allowed to establish settlements in approved areas. There are lists of suitable planets, worlds that have been surveyed and confirmed safe for different types of life, worlds that do not conflict with existing territorial claims." The alien's breathing became faster. Your people looked at these lists, nodded politely, and then went somewhere else entirely. They found planets that were not on any list, worlds and systems that had been marked as uninhabitable or uninteresting. They turned them into homes anyway. And that bothered you? Carter asked. Bothered us? Zexthol's translator made several rapid clicking sounds. At first we were amazed. How were you finding resources and opportunities that our surveys had missed? How were you surviving on worlds that our experts said could not support life? We sent investigation teams to study your methods. The alien leaned forward now, mimicking Carter's earlier posture. What we found made no sense. Your people were not using advanced technology. They were not following established terraforming procedures. They were just making things work, taking whatever they found and turning it into what they needed. Maria made a note on her tablet. This was new information. The official reports had never mentioned alien investigation teams. The teams came back with stories that sounded impossible. Zexthol continued. Humans who had turned underground ice caves into thriving farms. Settlers who were mining valuable minerals from asteroids using equipment designed for completely different purposes. Colonies that were growing food in soil that our tests said was toxic. The alien paused and looked directly at both humans in the room. That was when we realized you were not like other species. Other civilizations specialized. They developed expertise in specific areas and traded with others for what they lacked. But humans seemed to be generalists who could adapt to anything. Carter nodded slowly. Adaptation is a survival trait. Survival, Zexthol repeated, and his translator made a long, low tone. Yes, we thought we understood what that meant. But we learned that human survival and alien survival are very different things. The recording device continued its quiet work, capturing words that would soon change how the galaxy understood the small blue planet called Earth, and the stubborn species that had refused to follow anyone else's rules. Commander Zexthol's 4 eyes dimmed as he recalled what came next. His translator device made soft clicking sounds as he searched for words that could explain the impossible. Daniel Carter sat perfectly still, waiting. Maria Santos adjusted her recording device to capture every detail. The Kepler station incident changed everything. Zexthol said slowly. Your people had built a research outpost in the Kepler 442 system. According to our maps, this was clearly Veltar territory. It had been marked as ours for over 200 years. No other species had ever questioned this. The aliens' breathing became irregular. We sent a patrol fleet to investigate. Standard procedure. We expected to find a small group of confused humans who had made a navigation error. We planned to politely relocate them to an approved area. This is how civilized species handle territorial disputes. Carter nodded but remained silent. Captain Jake Morrison was in charge of your research station. Zexthol continued. When our fleet arrived, we broadcast the standard message. We explained that they were in violation of established territorial boundaries. We offered to help them relocate to a suitable alternative location. We gave them 30 standard days to prepare for evacuation. The alien paused and touched his translator device. It made several adjustment beeps. Captain Morrison's response was unlike anything in our diplomatic records. He said no. Not just no, but absolutely no. He said the humans had spent 3 years building their station and they were not leaving. Ever. Maria Santos made a note. The official records had never included Morrison's exact words. At first we thought this was a misunderstanding, Zexthol said. Perhaps the translation was incorrect. Perhaps Morrison did not understand the situation. We sent a diplomatic team to explain things more clearly. The alien's eyes focused on something neither human could see. The diplomatic team met with Morrison and his staff. Dr. Lisa Chang was their science officer. Ben Parker handled communications. They were all very polite. They served our diplomats refreshments and listened carefully to our explanations. Zexthol's voice grew quieter. Then Morrison asked our lead diplomat a question that no one had ever asked before. He wanted to know what gave us the right to claim an entire star system that we had never colonized or even visited regularly. He asked why our territorial boundaries were more important than human needs. Carter leaned forward slightly. What did your diplomat say? He explained about the Treaty of Galactic Boundaries, Zexthol replied. Ancient agreements that prevented conflicts between species. Rules that had kept peace for centuries. Morrison listened politely and then asked another question. He wanted to know which human representatives had signed these treaties. The room fell silent except for the hum of air recyclers. The answer, of course, was that no humans had signed anything. Zexthol continued. Humanity was not part of the galactic community when these agreements were made. Morrison pointed out that humans had not agreed to boundaries they had played no part in creating. Maria Santos shifted against the wall. This was definitely not in any official report. Our diplomat tried to explain that this was how things worked, Zexthul said. New species accept existing arrangements. They join the community by respecting what came before. This is how civilization functions. The alien's translator made a long, low tone. Morrison thanked our diplomat for the explanation. Then he said that humans would respectfully decline to be bound by agreements they had never been part of. He said they would continue their research and wished us well. Carter remained silent, but his eyes showed interest. When our diplomatic team returned to the fleet, they recommended immediate military action. Zexthul continued, not because the humans were hostile, but because they were being unreasonable. In galactic law, unreasonable behavior by new species must be corrected quickly before it spreads. The alien paused and looked directly at Carter. We had no idea what we were about to face. Fleet Commander Kethaval ordered a standard blockade, Zexthul said. 6 battle cruisers surrounded the station. We cut off their supply lines and communication with Earth. Standard siege tactics. Most species surrender within days when faced with overwhelming force. Maria Santos watched the alien carefully. His body language suggested he was approaching something difficult. Weeks passed, then months. The humans did not surrender. They did not even seem bothered by the blockade. Our sensors showed normal activity on their station. People working. Systems running. No signs of distress. Zexthul's breathing became faster. After 3 months, we intercepted one of their communication transmissions. Morrison was sending a message to Earth. He reported that they were doing well and that their research was ahead of schedule. He mentioned the Veltar fleet as if we were a minor inconvenience. The alien touched his translator again. Fleet Commander Kethaval decided to board the station. Show of force. Make the humans understand the seriousness of their situation. Carter spoke for the first time in several minutes. How did that go? Badly, Zexthul replied. The boarding party found that the humans had modified their station extensively. What had been a simple research facility was now something else entirely. Corridors had been rerouted. Systems had been changed. The entire structure had been turned into a fortress. The alien's 4 eyes blinked in rapid sequence. Morrison met the boarding party at the airlock. He was polite but firm. He explained that the station was human territory and that armed aliens were not welcome. He asked them to leave. Maria Santos made another note. The boarding party had never reported being asked to leave. When our soldiers refused, Morrison activated what he called security measures. Zexthul continued. The lights went out. Emergency barriers slammed down. Artificial gravity fluctuated wildly. Our boarding party found themselves trapped in a maze of corridors that had not existed in the original station plans. The alien paused and seemed to gather his strength. It took 6 hours to extract our soldiers. They were unharmed but completely disoriented. Morrison had turned scientific equipment into security systems. He had weaponized the station's life support. He had created traps using mining tools and atmospheric processors. Carter nodded slowly. Morrison was a mining engineer before he became a station commander. We learned this later, Zexthul said, along with many other things about humans that our intelligence files had missed. Dr. Lisa Chang was not just a scientist. She was a former military engineer. Ben Parker had been a communications specialist in your Space Force. Every person on that station had skills that our surveys had not detected. The recording device captured every word as Commander Zexthul continued his account of humanity's first real conflict with Galactic Authority and the moment when the Veltar began to understand that humans were unlike any species they had ever encountered. Commander Zexthul's translator device flickered as he searched for words to describe what came next. His 4 eyes moved between Daniel Carter and Maria Santos, as if trying to judge whether they would believe what he was about to say. The siege of Kepler Station lasted 6 months, Zexthul said. 6 months of complete failure for the most advanced military force in our sector. Morrison and his people turned their research station into something that defied every rule of warfare we knew. Carter waited silently while the alien gathered his thoughts. They used greenhouse modules as kinetic weapons, Zexthul continued. Dr. Chang modified atmospheric processors to jam our communications. Ben Parker turned their mining charges into guided missiles that could track our patrol ships. Everything they touched became a weapon. The aliens' breathing grew irregular, but the worst part was not what they built. The worst part was how they thought. Our military computers tried to predict their actions using standard tactical analysis. Every prediction was wrong. Maria Santos adjusted her recording device as Zexthel leaned forward. Normal species follow logical patterns in warfare, the alien explained. They protect their most valuable resources. They retreat when facing superior numbers. They surrender when victory becomes impossible. These are the rules that make military planning possible. The alien paused and touched his translator. Humans followed none of these rules. Morrison would sacrifice strategic positions to save single individuals. He would launch attacks when retreat was the only logical option. He made decisions that our computers called impossible because no rational being would choose such actions. Carter spoke quietly. What kind of decisions? There was a day when our fleet finally managed to damage their main power generator, Zexthel replied. Their station was running on emergency power. They had maybe 12 hours before life support failed completely. Any reasonable commander would have surrendered to save his people. The aliens' four eyes blinked in sequence. Instead, Morrison launched every mining pod they had in a direct attack on our flagship. 23 small craft against a battle cruiser. Our sensors showed that the pods had been modified with their remaining explosives. It was a suicide mission that could not possibly succeed. Maria Santos made a note while Carter remained silent. The attack should have been easily defeated, Zexthel continued. Our defensive systems were designed to handle thousands of incoming missiles. 23 mining pods should have been destroyed in minutes. The alien's voice grew quieter. But Morrison had done something our designers never considered. He had linked the pods together with cables and debris. When we destroyed the first few pods, the explosions damaged our targeting systems. The remaining pods used the confusion to get close enough to damage our shields. Zexthel stopped speaking for several seconds. When he continued, his translator made soft clicking sounds. The damage was not serious, but the psychological effect was devastating. A human research station with improvised weapons had hurt a Veltar battlecruiser. Word of this spread through our fleet faster than official communications. Carter nodded but said nothing. 3 days later, the human destroyer New Frontier arrived. Zexthel said. Commander Ryan Brooks demanded immediate withdrawal of all Veltar forces from the system. When Fleet Commander Kethaval refused, Brooks attacked. The alien's breathing became faster. 1 human destroyer against 6 Veltar battlecruisers. The odds were impossible. Our victory should have been certain. Maria Santos watched the alien carefully. His body language showed fear mixed with something that looked almost like admiration. The battle lasted 14 hours, Zexthel continued. Brooks used tactics that violated every principle of space combat we knew. He would charge directly at our heaviest ships, then veer away at the last second. He used his ship's exhaust as a weapon. He hid behind our own vessels to avoid return fire. The alien paused and looked directly at Carter. Worst of all, he was learning. Every time we tried a new strategy, Brooks adapted faster than our computers could calculate new approaches. By the end of the battle, he was predicting our moves better than we were. Carter leaned forward slightly. What was the outcome? Brooks disabled 4 of our 6 battle cruisers without destroying any of them, Zexthel replied. He could have killed thousands of our people, but he chose not to. When Fleet Commander Kethval finally agreed to withdraw, Brooks allowed us to leave with our wounded. The room fell silent except for the hum of air recyclers. The Kepler station incident should have been an isolated problem, Zexthel continued after a moment. 1 group of stubborn humans in 1 remote system. But within weeks, similar incidents began happening across 12 different star systems. The alien's translator made several rapid beeps as it processed his next words. Every time, the pattern was the same. Humans would establish colonies or outposts in areas we considered restricted. When we ordered them to leave, they refused. When we tried to force them to leave, they fought back with weapons and tactics that made no sense. Maria Santos shifted her position against the wall. This was information that had never appeared in any official reports. Admiral Kate Nelson was the worst, Zexthel said, and his translator made a tone that suggested both fear and respect. She commanded human forces in the Sigma Draconis system. When we ordered evacuation of their colonies, she turned the entire system into what she called a free fire zone. The alien's 4 eyes focused on memories that were clearly painful. Nelson had no formal military background, Zexthel continued. She had been a cargo ship captain before the war, but she understood something about space combat that our best strategists missed. She realized that in space everything can be a weapon if you use it correctly. Carter waited while the alien gathered his thoughts. Nelson's forces hijacked cargo vessels and turned them into guided missiles. They hollowed out asteroids and filled them with explosives. They used mining equipment to change the orbits of space debris, creating obstacle courses that only human pilots seemed able to navigate. The alien's breathing became irregular again, but the most terrifying thing about Nelson was her patience. She was willing to fight a war that lasted years. Our species think in terms of quick, decisive actions. Humans seemed prepared to fight forever if necessary. Zexthul looked at both humans in the room. After 3 years of what we called minor border conflicts, we had learned something that changed everything. Humans did not fight wars the way other species fought wars. They fought like every battle was the last battle they would ever fight. The recording device continued its quiet work as the alien commander prepared to reveal even more disturbing truths about humanity's approach to conflict and survival. Commander Zexthul's 4 eyes dimmed as he prepared to describe what he called the most terrifying discovery about humans. His translator device made nervous clicking sounds while Daniel Carter and Maria Santos waited in silence. The Battle of Proxima Gate changed everything we thought we knew about your species, Zexthul began. Lieutenant Colonel Sam Hayes commanded a small human fleet there. Only 12 ships against our entire 3rd battle group. We expected an easy victory. The alien's breathing became shallow. Hayes had no support from Earth, no communication with other human forces. His fleet was completely isolated in deep space. According to every rule of military strategy, he should have retreated or surrendered. Carter remained silent, but his eyes showed interest in what was coming next. Instead, Hayes did something that our intelligence analysts still cannot explain. Zexthul continued. At exactly 1400 hours Galactic Standard Time, human forces across 17 different star systems launched coordinated attacks against our supply depots and communication stations. The alien paused and touched his translator device. 17 systems. Some of them were hundreds of light years apart. The attacks happened simultaneously, down to the minute. Perfect coordination across distances that make real-time communication impossible. Maria Santos made a note on her tablet while keeping her recording device focused on the alien commander. At first, we thought the humans had developed some kind of faster-than-light communication technology, Zexthul said. Our scientists worked for months trying to detect these mysterious signals. We found nothing. The alien's voice grew quieter. Then we captured some of Hayes's officers during a supply raid. When we interrogated them, they gave us answers that made no sense. They said they had no special communication equipment. They had not received orders from any central command. They simply knew what needed to be done. Carter leaned forward slightly. What did your interrogators make of that? They thought the humans were lying or had been brainwashed, Zexthul replied. So we used truth detection technology, neural scanners that make deception impossible. The humans were telling the truth. They really had acted without orders or communication. The alien's translator made several rapid beeps as it processed his next words. We brought in Dr. Velthanis, our best expert on alien psychology. She studied the captured humans for weeks. Her report was classified at the highest levels because her conclusions were considered too dangerous for general knowledge. Maria Santos adjusted her position against the wall, sensing that something important was coming. Dr. Velthanis discovered that humans have something she called distributed consciousness. Zexthul continued. Individual humans are connected to other humans through invisible networks of shared experience and cultural understanding. When one human makes a decision, somehow other humans in similar situations make the same decision. The alien looked directly at Carter. This was not telepathy or technology. It was something much more frightening. It was collective instinct based on shared values and common training. Carter nodded but remained silent. Dr. Velthanis tested this theory, Zexthul said. She presented isolated human prisoners with tactical scenarios. Without any communication between them, the humans made almost identical decisions. They chose the same strategies. They identified the same priorities. They even used similar language to explain their reasoning. The alien's 4 eyes blinked in rapid sequence. Other galactic species make decisions based on individual analysis and official protocols. Humans seem to make decisions based on what other humans would do in the same situation. even humans they have never met. The room fell silent except for the hum of air recyclers. The implications terrified our high command, Zexthul continued. If humans could coordinate without communication, then our standard military strategies were useless. We could not intercept their orders because they had no orders. We could not disrupt their command structure because they had no formal command structure. Maria Santos made another note as the aliens' breathing became irregular. Colonel Alex Turner proved this point. During the asteroid belt campaigns, Zexthul said. Turner was a former Marine who had become a civilian mining supervisor. When we invaded his system, he somehow organized thousands of miners and cargo pilots into an effective military force. The alien's translator made a long, low tone. Turner had no formal authority over these people. Many of them had never served in any military. But when he asked for volunteers to fight, nearly everyone agreed to follow his leadership. Carter spoke for the first time in several minutes. Leadership is about trust and shared purpose. Yes, Zexthul replied, and his voice carried a tone that the translator could not capture. But Turner's people trusted him even when his orders seemed insane. He asked cargo pilots to ram their ships into our battlecruisers. He told miners to use their equipment as weapons against trained soldiers. These people followed orders that would result in their certain death. The alien paused and seemed to gather his strength. What made this even more disturbing was how Turner's tactics spread to other human resistance groups. Groups that had no contact with him began using his methods. It was as if his ideas had somehow infected every human in the galaxy. Maria Santos shifted against the wall as Zexthul continued. Dr. Helen Brooks was even worse, the alien said. She was a xenopsychologist who had been studying our culture as part of a peaceful research exchange. When the war began, she used her knowledge of Veltar psychology to infiltrate our command structures. The alien's translator made several adjustment beeps. Brooks understood how our military hierarchy worked better than most of our own officers. She could predict how our commanders would react to different situations. She knew which of our leaders could be influenced and which ones could not be compromised. Carter remained silent, but his expression showed careful attention. Brooks never used violence or deception, Zexthul continued. She simply understood how individuals within large organizations think and behave. She knew which information would cause confusion and which rumors would spread fastest through our ranks. The alien looked at both humans in the room. Within months, Brooks had turned our own command structure against itself. Our officers began questioning orders. Our intelligence networks became unreliable. Our supply chains developed mysterious inefficiencies that no one could trace back to any specific cause. Zexthul's four eyes focused on something neither human could see. The most frightening thing was that Brooks did all of this while officially remaining a neutral researcher. She attended our briefings. She had access to our strategic planning. She was helping us understand human psychology even while she was using that same psychology to defeat us. The recording device captured every word as the alien commander prepared to reveal the final truth about why humanity had become the galaxy's greatest nightmare. Commander Zexthul sat quietly for a long moment, his four eyes staring at the metal table between himself and Daniel Carter. His translator device had stopped making its usual clicking sounds. The silence in the room felt heavy, like the moment before a thunderstorm. Maria Santos checked her recording device one final time. 3 years, Zexthul said finally. 3 years of what we called minor border conflicts. 3 years of telling ourselves that humans were just another stubborn species that would eventually learn to follow galactic law. The alien's breathing became slow and deliberate, but after 3 years we could no longer pretend that this was a normal situation. Half the galaxy was paralyzed, not because humans had conquered anyone, not because they had superior technology or massive fleets, but because every civilized species had learned to fear what would happen if they came into conflict with humans. Carter leaned back in his chair, waiting. The turning point came during the Council of Velthok Prime, Zexthul continued. Representatives from 47 different species gathered to discuss what they called the human problem. The meeting was supposed to last 3 days. It lasted 3 weeks. The alien's translator flickered as he searched for the right words. Every species had stories. The Keth Mari told about human traders who had turned simple commercial disputes into system-wide economic warfare. The Zorthak described human colonists who had transformed barren worlds into thriving settlements in defiance of all scientific predictions. Maria Santos made notes while the alien continued. But the most disturbing reports came from species that had tried to avoid humans entirely, Zexthul said. The Yithkan had withdrawn all their forces from sectors where humans were active. They thought isolation would keep them safe. Instead, they found that humans followed them. The alien's four eyes focused on Carter, not to attack, not to conquer, but to offer help. Humans would arrive at Yithkan colonies during emergencies, providing aid that was desperately needed but never requested. They would leave behind technology and knowledge that improved Yithkan life in ways the Yithkan had never imagined. Carter remained silent, but his expression showed interest. The Yithkan found this more frightening than any military threat. Zexthul continued. They could not repay human kindness. They could not understand human motivations. Worst of all, they began to depend on human assistance. Within 2 years, Yithkan colonies were sending requests for human experts in human technology. The alien paused and touched his translator device. Similar stories came from dozens of species. Humans were not conquering the galaxy through force. They were conquering it through usefulness. Every species that encountered humans found their lives improved in some way. And that improvement came with strings attached that no one understood until it was too late. Maria Santos shifted her position against the wall as Zexthul's voice grew quieter. Dr. Chenthul, from the Galactic Psychology Institute, presented the most disturbing analysis, the alien said. She had studied human behavior for 2 years. Her conclusion was that humans did not think like any other known species. Other civilizations sought to maintain stability and avoid unnecessary risks. Humans seemed to actively seek out challenges and impossible situations. The alien's translator made several rapid beeps. Dr. Chenthul called this the human addiction to adversity. Humans became more creative, more determined, and more dangerous when facing difficulties that would cause other species to give up. The worse their situation became, the more likely they were to find solutions that no one else had considered. Carter spoke for the first time in several minutes. Adversity builds character. Character, Zexthul repeated, and his translator made a tone that suggested confusion. Dr. Chenthul used a similar word. She said humans had something she called moral certainty. When humans believed they were fighting for something important, they would continue fighting regardless of casualties or consequences. The room fell silent except for the hum of air recyclers. The final report from the council was classified at the highest levels. Zexthul continued. But the conclusion was simple. Humanity represented an existential threat to galactic civilization, not because they wanted to destroy other species, but because they would never stop growing, never stop exploring, and never stop changing things. The alien looked directly at both humans in the room. Every other species in the galaxy had found their place in the cosmic order. They had territories they were satisfied with. They had technologies they considered sufficient. They had social systems that provided stability and peace. Zexthul's four eyes blinked in sequence. Humans wanted more. Always more. More territory. More knowledge. More challenges to overcome. They looked at the stable galactic civilization that had existed for thousands of years and saw it as a problem to be solved, rather than a system to be joined. Maria Santos made her final notes as the alien prepared to deliver his conclusion. The vote to declare war on humanity was unanimous, Zexthul said. 47 species agreed that humans had to be stopped before they disrupted the entire galactic order. We mobilized the largest military force in recorded history. We were confident that overwhelming superiority would force human surrender within months. The alien's breathing became irregular. The war lasted 6 months, not because humans had superior military power, but because they turned the conflict into something that none of us were prepared to fight. They made it personal. Carter leaned forward slightly. Personal how? Every human civilian became a potential soldier, Zexthul replied. Every human colony became a fortress. Every human ship became a weapon. But most importantly, every human became willing to die rather than surrender. Not for territory or resources or political power, but for the right to remain human. The alien's translator made a long, low tone. We realized that defeating humanity would require the complete extinction of your species. And even then, we were not certain of victory. Humans had shown a remarkable ability to survive in impossible conditions and return stronger than before. Zexthul looked at Carter with all 4 eyes. The Galactic Council met in emergency session. The choice was simple: continue fighting until either humanity was extinct, or galactic civilization collapsed from the effort required to defeat you, or find another solution. The alien paused for several seconds. We chose surrender. Not military surrender, but acknowledgement that humans would never fit into the galactic order as it existed. If we wanted peace, we had to change the order to accommodate human nature, rather than trying to change human nature to fit the order. Daniel Carter finally spoke the question that had been waiting throughout the entire conversation. So what happens now? Commander Zexthol's translator flickered one final time. Now we learn to live in a galaxy where humans exist. We adapt our laws to account for species that do not accept boundaries they did not help create. We modify our trade agreements for people who turn every transaction into an opportunity for innovation. Most importantly, we prepare for whatever threats might come from unexplored space, because we now know that when facing the unknown, we want humans fighting with us rather than against us. The recording device captured his final words. Humanity became the galaxy's greatest nightmare, not through conquest or destruction, but through absolute refusal to be anything other than human. And now that nightmare is our only hope for survival.